Welcome to the Weekly Whiff podcast, episode number 7. And today we will be covering Ju-on, The Grudge, a Japanese horror film from the late 90s.
It's actually, I've researched this before, and it's 2002.
2002, really?
Yeah, we were wrong about it being late 90s. I'm pretty sure it's 2002.
Interesting. So, Shaun finally... He's firing off another warning shot for us, and it was an interesting experience. And we watched that last night, and I have questions and things to raise, but Shaun is very passionate about the subject, so I think he'll be taking the lead on this one.
I think I have a few answers, but
Absolutely.
I think as per usual, how was your week, Pete?
My week was pretty chill, bro. I had just a couple of days on work, and then I've honestly just been no-lifing Skyrim that hard. My eyeballs are starting to fall out.
Yeah.
A lot of Skyrim. And a bit of Siege.
A bit of Siege,
yeah. A bit of both, but just games, man. But looking forward to my Easter holiday, and that should be dating this podcast. Given
it should be.
When it's going to come
this
out,
will
what's going
probably
on.
be a month or two after Easter,
Yeah,
most likely.
Oh, well, happy future, whatever it is. But yeah, that's been my week, man. How about your week? How's your week been?
Pretty much the same. Like, as you, just playing games. I started playing Death Stranding, and I'm interested in the experience overall, but I don't think I'm far enough into comments on the overall game. I've just been walking around back and forth, delivering things, fell over in a river and then lost all my packages and kind of fucking hated my life, and then picked everything up and delivered everything, then quit the game, and then I haven't really touched it since. I've got like a massive week off, so I'm considering if I just want to spend a whole week no-lifing Death Stranding, or if I want to go back to Final Fantasy 15 and try and get progress through it. But either way, I imagine this week would just be me fucking no-lifing games for the whole week. And probably whatever else we do for the podcast as well, I imagine.
Nifty.
But yeah, alright. Well, our weeks are pretty fucking lame, so we'll just talk about the movie.
Alright, bro.
So yes, Ju-on, The Grudge, a well-known title, I'd say, in the horror genre. Like, I think most people would know of The Grudge. They probably know of it more from the remake, which is what my first experience with it was. I was fucking terrified of Kayako from The Grudge for years because I saw her once in the remake when my mum was watching it, and after that, I never wanted to fucking see her again and was constantly terrified of the idea of that woman. Unfortunately for me, as a stupid 9-year-old that thinks all horror movies are real, I didn't have the safety of knowing that Kayako was limited to only killing people to enter the house, so I thought she'd kill me regardless. And for most of that year, I remember being terrified to look under my bed or whatnot because I was afraid I'd be killed by some demon ghost lady. But then I grew up and realized and stopped thinking horror movies were real for one thing, and then also watched the movie. I was like, fuck, I wish I'd known that when I was a kid because that would have saved me a year of trauma. But that's basically my experience with Ju-on, The Grudge, and I'll talk about my experience of horror in a bit. But I wanted to start this off with, what are your initial thoughts on it, Pete?
It's terrifying. It's horrifying, and I hate you for making me do this. But no, it was an experience, man, for sure. I think it's a very well put together movie, for sure. The framing, the sound design is fantastic. The monster design is great. Yeah. I think that there's... And I'm talking in terms of, I don't really know horror films. I don't know the tropes. I'm not familiar with a lot of that kind of stuff. I know cat scares. I know a lot of that kind of thing. Yeah. I feel, though, that with this movie, from what I've observed of it, it is the progenitor of so many other horror films.
I think it definitely did inspire a lot of horror films. I think it definitely kicked off a kind of trend in horror films. But I think this film is also so like unconventional in a lot of ways that even though films have been inspired by it, it definitely has not mimicked its style. This film is incredibly unique, in my opinion, how it wants to tell its story. But we'll get more into that. But I remember you saying off the podcast that you have a bit of a thing with horror, and do you want to go into that before we go into the episode?
I have a rather hyperactive imagination, and every time I watch a horror movie, even something with horror elements in it, I kid you not, it can be PG rated or whatever, you can shake your head all you like, mate. It messes with me really hard because I am then jumping at shadows. I'm expecting some demon lady to crawl out of the ceiling and then eat my face. Like, I just don't know. It makes me jump at shadows. It makes me nervous and skittery, and I don't sleep well afterwards. I had the unique advantage, I think, going into this one, realizing that, well, in a lot of ways, actually, this film's older.
This film is, older. And it does show when you're watching it.
It does. And so it seems less real for me. But because I guess I have this kind of crazy sympathetic thing where I watch movies and really internalize them and really make them sort of in my head. Maybe one of the benefits of doing the podcast is that you can view things a little bit more critically. But that's not to say that I wasn't shit scared the entire way through it. I mean, I was talking half the time anyway. And one of the reasons I talk is when I get nervous or frustrated that I tend to sort of just start talking or mouthing off, and particularly when I'm in really uncomfortable situations. So I can be lying down on the couch and you guys are all around me in a dark room at 7:30 at night and it's still freaking me the fuck out. So I'm just talking and trying to take my mind off of it, and it's not doing shit.
Yeah.
Pretty much. But I found, I like, in retrospect, I don't hate it.
Well, I'm glad.
But I really don't like it either.
Yeah.
That's just because of the genre thing. There's a large barrier in play. I mean, a couple of years ago, we watched like Scream, which was good.
Scream, yeah.
I like Scream because it also has that kind of older school thing. It's also self-referential and it's kind of a bit hyper-real or a bit, like, as you mentioned in your excellent blog post, that it's not a satire, but it's close to satire. So it's not taking itself too seriously, except when it is, and as a result, you kind of have a disconnect from it, so you're not as invested. And we went out and we took into the movies and we went and watched Quiet Place, which was just a nail-biter the whole way through it. And that messed with me a bit. Not as bad because it was more of a thriller / slow burn kind of survival film than it is a straight horror film.
This is probably the first like full-blown horror movie that we threw you into.
Well, we went through Alien, if you count Alien.
Alien was kind of a horror, yeah.
But it's old school, so it's not...
Yeah, because I kind of just threw you into fucking existential shit during that period. I remember I made you watch It Comes at Night. It Comes at Night was another one. Yeah, that was freaky. But also, again, it's not really horror. And in the case that this movie is, this movie is
more than the same thing. And also Predator, which is just an amazing cheese fest.
Yeah,
but it's still good technically classed as horror in some cases, I guess.
Yeah.
So I'm very unfamiliar with most of this, and as a result, it was a fresh experience. It was new. It was interesting. Yeah, it was terrifying. It was horrifying. And I really enjoyed it. I enjoy it in the sense of I can enjoy it from an artistic standpoint, but I cannot say that I want to make this into a regular thing.
Yes, no, that's...
And I'm looking at you. Don't turn this into a regular thing, Shaun, please.
We'll see. I'll give it a couple months or so. But from my end, I'm very familiar with horror. Obviously, I'd heard with what I'm aiming for with my blog. But for me, since I said before, this movie was a bit of a childhood trauma for me. Like, I was petrified of it as a kid. Just coming back to it, I was very interested in if I'd be scared of it or, like, if I'd fucking hate watching it. And I definitely think I find it more creepy than I do terrifying to me, and it's very unnerving to me at points, especially the opening scene where it has, like, him killing Kayako and, like, it's cutting back and forth. And I'll go into a plot structure a bit briefly in a bit because I think we need it for this episode. But I find it creepy more than anything, and it kind of unsettles me to watch, but I don't find it too scary or terrifying. I think it is a bit dated in areas as well, but I more love how it's structured and what the story it's telling, how it's telling the story it is telling. And we'll get into that, but I'll now go into the brief plot of the film, because I think Pete needs a bit of a rundown, because he was very...
I was confused.
Yeah, he was very confused. So I have a massive timeline here. Unfortunately, I don't know if we can show it on the episode, but it's just this really fucking dodgy looking paper with, like, the title of the film and then all the character names. So the film is segmented into different chapters, basically. The chapters are titled after the characters that are basically getting killed in that chapter. But it does start off with a little intro sequence where you see Kayako's husband killing Kayako and Toshio, the child, as well as the cat, because, why not? And then it cuts to Rika, who is the main character, in a sense, of the film, in that she's the one you probably see the most throughout the film, but even then, kind of not. I will get into that later as well, but she's a social worker that's sent to go to this house to investigate. She goes there, finds an old woman, like, terrified of something. She doesn't find any of the occupants of the house, and she does find Toshio in, like, a wardrobe, and she gets scared by him and a cat. And then after that, the Grudge, or the Ju-on, descends upon the old woman and then kills her. And at this point, I should probably mention that a Ju-on is explained in the intro to be when someone is killed in a spurt of rage or great sorrow, and they come back because of that rage. So they're kind of just a hatred manifest in this movie, basically. All that's left of them is their hatred, which we'll once again go into later. But then after the Rika segment, it jumps to Katsuya, which is the son of the old woman that you see before, and you see how him and his wife are terrified by the Ju-on in the house, and then his sister comes over, and then after Katsuya is killed, it jumps to his sister's perspective, and then his sister's killed, and then it goes back to Rika, and it shows the detectives kind of working a case on it, and then an old cop who worked on the case where Kayako was killed is brought in, and then he ends up getting killed, but before that he sees a vision of his daughter in the future, and And then the movie jumps to his daughter in the future after he's killed off screen, and then it shows her getting tormented by the Grudge because she goes into the house, and then she starts getting chased by it, and then she ends up getting killed. Then it jumps back to Eureka, and then it shows her final stand as she tries to confront Kayako, and then starts to understand what she is, and then she gets killed by Taiko, who walks down the stairs. So that all sounds very fucking confusing, obviously, but I think there is a reason for why the film does that. The film is very obviously structured in reverse, almost, where it starts midway, and then it starts working backwards, and then it starts working forwards again, but then it jumps forward a lot, and then it jumps back a bit. And I think the film does this because it's kind of meant to show how far back and how far forward the curse does go, since this is a curse that you can't escape, basically. I don't think any of the characters in the franchise ever escape it. I think it's just you're doomed to die once you enter the house. And obviously, the Ju-on is attached to the house as well, because Kayako was killed there, so she can't leave the house unless someone comes into the house, then leaves, in which case she'll happily chase them and kill him. But I interpret the structure as being about demonstrating how all these characters that have these minor connections with each other end up getting killed just because of that one minor connection, and it shows how kind of relentless and how much the curse will seek out those one connections. And I think it ties into the idea that Kayako lost her family, so she's taking out her hatred on these innocent people that have nothing to do with her, but she's taking out because she's just her hatred left on Earth, and she's taking it out to kill them all and also take away the connections to have, because she wasn't allowed to have a family because she was murdered, unfortunately, by her husband. And it's very confusing and all that, but ultimately that's the plot of the movie, that it's just about this woman's hatred. And I saw this interesting review talking about how there's no main character in the movie, but I think there is a main character, and I think the main character is Kayako, in a sense, is what my interpretation of the film is. And the film is about her, and how her hatred for what's happened to her has just affected, the lives to come, to enter the house later on. But I've gone off on a tangent a bit, so you said you were a bit confused by the fragmented story. Did I bring any clarity to that at all?
Absolutely. I'm under the impression, though, that the last part, Rika, it is years later. It is at the same
I'm not
time.
sure, because the Wikipedia page, because I ended up going there just to kind of get some more clarity, even though I hate using Wikipedia for information all the time, because it's a bit iffy. But it seems to imply that Kayako's plotline, not the Kayako, the Rika, the epilogue chapter is after Izumi, when she dies, which seems a bit surprising to me, because Izumi looks significantly older, and Rika doesn't look that much older as well.
But then also she went away, and she was young.
She did,
when she started, and then her friend is completely different. And they both got different lives.
So I think it could be, but I'm a bit unsure to say that. I think those two chapters could be interchanged in terms of position, but either way, it is significantly after the event. It just kind of demonstrates that Kayako doesn't really leave or anything, that she will come back eventually, and it kind of lures you into this false sense of security, I guess. But anyway, you were saying about the structure.
Yeah, it jumps back and forth, and it actually plays really well into the whole horror system, because you don't really know it's not immediately obvious what is going on.
Yes.
And I think that could be very well the tagline for this film. You don't know what's going to happen next, and that's what makes good suspense, right? You really genuinely don't know if anyone's going to escape this thing, if anyone's going to be able to survive it, if anyone's going to... What's going on? Why? The big why is very hard to sort of... There's a lot of implication going on. It's quite difficult to sort of nail down what's going on at any given point, why this curse is chasing people. And that was a big question that kept coming up in my head after about the halfway point.
Yeah.
I was like, what do they want? What does the curse want? What is it? And how does it... Essentially, also, my inner optimist is playing off and going, how do you fix this?
Exactly.
When will this curse be satiated? When can everyone go back to normal and I have to look under my own bed sheets for some kind of horrifyingly blood-stained creature that's just going to eat my face? There's... That question did keep popping up in my mind, and I thought, well, maybe going back through the timeline, you'd be able to figure out some kind of pattern or some kind of system, some kind of systematic approach that this curse has to people that will then allow it to die or allow it to finish up its thing. Because I suppose in the West with our ghost stories, there's always this idea of Western ghosts, or ghosts generally fulfilling a need that they didn't get in life, and then being able to expire after death. And I've got a couple of points I think I have to make on the difference between Western and Eastern.
I absolutely have a couple of things to say as well. But
I suppose I look for some kind of resolution. I suppose I look for some kind of reasoning or whatever behind it. I guess in a more straightforward possession movie like something like The Conjuring, which I haven't seen and hopefully don't have to ever see, there's the system of they're demons, they're chaotic evil, they just want people to die, so it makes sense.
Yes.
This because of this movie, in the demons are more human and they're old, once were people. I suppose one of my Western inflections in looking at it is that they want something.
Mm-hmm.
There's a goal. There's a thing you want to finish. There's a completion. There's an end to all this horror and madness and insanity and death. And there isn't.
Exactly.
Really, and that's what scares me. I think that's what freaks you out the most. Is I'm sort of sitting there waiting for some kind of resolution. You don't get one.
Yeah. I think ultimately, that's the kind of added effect of it being segmented into, focus on certain characters and whatnot. Because like you said, you go back trying to hope see if there's some kind of way out or some resolution that you can find. But by the time you get to the end of the movie, you've kind of got that sensation that, no, there's really no way. It's just this, unrelenting spirit that's just so hateful towards the earth that's just taking out her hatred on these innocent souls that have nothing to do with it. But it's just, the nature of how much her hatred stems. And that's why I think the segmented thing works for the movie, because it really does demonstrate that all these characters are kind of fucked.
Also, one thing I find really fascinating about this movie, in particular, is the ending of it, because there's this one really, really long, lingering shot of suburban Tokyo, and there's nothing there. There's a lot of weird posters up, missing posters, and there's paper blowing around and everything else, and then there's just Kayako at the end of it, staring into the camera, almost as if she's just eaten all of Tokyo.
Yeah, it's very eerie.
That almost was one of the scariest things for me. Because did she just eat the entire city? Is everyone dead?
It's weird. It's a very weird ending. I don't think she actually killed everyone. I think they kind of do it more to kind of make you feel alone in that final sequence, because obviously the character that you've kind of been with for the whole movie's just died. So you're just sitting there is that really it? And then you just see these empty streets, and then it just zooms in on Kayako, and it makes you feel hopeless almost. And I think it's effective. That ending shot is very creepy. It's it's probably the only ending jump scare in a sense, but it's not really even a jump scare, but the ending scare of a movie actually being really good in my opinion.
You're anticipating it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you also, this is an interesting thing about this movie. I think the first third of it conditions you into getting scared, getting jump scared, there's going to be weird, crazy stuff going on. And then, but the flip side, because you anticipate it, this is probably getting into cinematography and technique, but also with the story, because you anticipate things happening, you are expecting it, but you're not expecting it.
Yes.
You can't quite ever place when you're going to get your shit rocked, ever. You don't know what's going on.
I also think this film is very unique in how it does its jump scares in quotation marks. I don't even really think they're jump scares, because normally a jump scare is it's something just popping up and scaring you. But this movie seems to actually have the sound effects when the characters actually see the things that would normally jump scare them, but you don't yet. The characters are jumping because they see something, then the camera pans over, and there's nothing there because it's already moved. And I find that really interesting, because I've always complained about how jump scares have music cues that scare you, or meant to scare you.
Super loud, big scare chords.
But these seem more like they're only sounding when the characters are actually scared. Not when you're scared, but when the characters are scared. And you're what did they see? And then you see sometimes nothing, or sometimes you see the after effects of what just scared them, and it's very interestingly done. And I don't want to. I hesitate to call these scares cheap or anything, even though they do kind of fit the qualifications of what I would normally call a jump scare cheap. It feels a lot more better done in these films, where I'm not annoyed by them. I'm kind of that's interesting. It's very well done, in a way. And I don't know what it is that separates them. I think it is literally just that you don't actually see what is scaring these characters. It's the characters are actually experiencing it. It makes it feel more real to the characters. Yeah, back on the segmented films, I think that another aspect of it as well is that it also kind of splits the movie into little short stories almost as well, where you get these kind of little short horror films in this overall horror film, where it kind of experiments with different kind of ideas in each film with how these ghosts have. And I think each segment in its own way is pretty good. It has something going for it. I personally I jump back and forth between liking the Hitomi or Izumi segment the most, but I think those two are very fun, and I think it's because it's outside of the house, so it's when you feel safe, and then all of a sudden, so Hitomi's outside of the house. For the whole movie, you've been inside the house, and all these characters have died, so she's outside the house, and you think, oh, well, maybe she'll be safe because she's outside, but then it starts terrorizing her, and you're like, oh, well, there really is no end, of this thing's reach. It will follow you everywhere. Then the same with Izumi as well. She's she doesn't even go in the house in her segment of the film, but she's still terrorized and haunted by it. She's killed in her house. It's very terrifying, and I think that those two scenes work best. Do you have a favorite segment for the film? Or I say favorite, but for you it'd be different. It'd be scene that you appreciate but don't like.
Yeah, fair. It's a tough one, man. I think the opening is really effective.
It is very.
And there is, because I was having this conversation. I got you to pause the movie and ask the question, and like, from what I understand, Japanese like culture dictates a really clean house, right? So,
I believe so.
Yeah, like I don't know about this. I'm not going to cast aspersions, but from what I understand, for the most part, from what I've seen of media, at least when it comes to Japan, houses are always very tidy, very ordered, very sort of, there's just a sense of clean house. And then when you go into this particular house that's just cluttered and completely messed up, and they've got these really, really, really long one takes and no music, nothing, just blank dead space, silence.
Yeah.
And then she's just walking upstairs. So they can somehow, however they frame it and everything else, you sort of get an understanding of what's going on, but and you're anticipating something to sort of jump out and freak you out completely. But it's just the foreshadowing almost. So you go there, you see the opening sequence and it's kind of crazy, but the second she steps into the house and you just see everything strewn everywhere, the old lady not talking, and it's really, really effective. I think it gives you a really good idea of what's going on. And you also notice that when they do the flashback to when the two, the husband and the wife, were there with their mother, everything's clean, they're tidy. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting in that where this curse happens, mess seems to follow, chaos seems to follow. There's always like these visual cues of things blowing across the street, or the entire house is completely full of random crap, or or characters knocking things over and sort of creating chaos in different situations. It's, for the most part, I mean, there is that bathroom scene where the security guard gets eaten up by the curse. Yeah. And then you've got there's other ones where she's in her house and it's kind of clean and tidy and everything. But there's always seems to be this sort of visual representational foreshadowing of chaos in the actual film, particularly when it comes to regards to this house in and of itself. Yeah. Except the ending.
Yes.
The house is clean in the ending.
Yeah, it is pretty clean.
Which is another head fuck. Because you come to expect mess, you come to expect chaos. But it's not like that at the ending. Very ending of it, it's just dusty and it's clean. It's not like clean, but there's dust, but that's it. Yeah. Nothing else. It's really fascinating to me. I find that really, that for me is the best part of it. I think it's just the way that they use the visuals, the way that they use the set pieces to foreshadow, imply, and tell the story without necessarily needing to use characters actively explain what's going on.
The set pieces are fantastic in this film. The set design of the house is so important, and I'd say the house is almost as much a character as the actual characters are as well, because it is so essential to the film. And in a lot of ways, I don't think that's why I was always kind of hesitant about the idea of the remake, because I knew how important the house was in the original, even if I hadn't seen it. And you can't have these kind of Japanese style houses in American, in America. In an American movie remake, you can't have the characters be in this kind of house without it being in Japan, because this is a very Japanese house in a lot of ways. And this kind of house wouldn't be structured like this in America. It'd be very different. But this house is so claustrophobic. It's so tightly compacted, and when you see the characters walk around, you really feel how closed in they are, just from how the way the cameras are shot. And then the way Kayako climbs down the stairs as well, it also kind of mimics that of how she's kind of closed in by the house, and it makes Rika look like she's trapped when she's coming down the stairs. And I think the set design is very good at making you feel claustrophobic. Even when it's outside, it still feels kind of compact in. It has the shot of Izumi and her friends walking down the street and looking at the board, the missing papers on it. But the buildings around her still feel like they're kind of closing her in, and the way even when she's on the veranda of her house as well, it still feels too tight. And I think the movie does a great job with its set of making you feel closed in with the characters, and I think that's so important with this film when it is a character because the spirits are pretty slow for the most part. They're not fast moving, but because the characters get paralyzed, they feel closed in when the threat starts homing in on them, and it's terrifying. It's so effective. And on top of that as well, the cinematography is fantastic. There's some fantastic camera angles and camera techniques in it.
There's no cutting. There's very, very little cutting in this film. I think that there is, obviously there are cuts, but the cinematography is fantastic. I think some of the best and freakiest moments of this film are when there's just its implications. Mm-hmm. So there's this one shot, I remember pretty clearly when Rika is walking this old guy. Yeah, I knew you'd talk about this. And then they open up this glass reflecting door, and you see a little flicker of Toshio, who's the kid that you were mentioning in the earlier podcast. It's sort of one of the monsters, I suppose, one of the ghosts. Yeah. And it's a flicker of him. Or when she's going up this elevator, when what's the name of the sister?
Hitomi, yeah, the elevator scene.
She's going up the elevator, you just see this kid just progressively getting closer as they flick up the floors rather. And she
doesn't notice either. It's there for the audience, and there's no music blaring or anything.
And even the sound is another part of it, but we could probably get into that in its own category. I think just for cinematography though, there's a lot of clever little shots And even the way that, like, when they do move it around, you have the kid there for 1 second and the kid not there for a second. You've got... And see, this is an interesting thing, that Kyako is the monster insofar as she's the one who eats people, right?
Yeah.
The kid is like the harbinger. He's like he turns up when you're about to die or when you're starting to lose your mind.
Yeah.
And that's interesting, like signpost, threat, signpost, threat, signpost, threat. And that is also an underpinning thing. When the kid turns up, they're starting to lose their shit. And when they die, it's when this creature comes out of nowhere and just eats their face. You know what I mean? That's how it works. And the cinematography reflects this. And when you talk about that short story, that sort of small chapter sections, that's when it really works. You know, Toshio starts turning up about halfway through, and then he ramps it up, and then Hyako comes out of nowhere and starts just messing with you.
Yes, yeah.
And that's, in retrospect, obvious. But when you're watching the film, it's not. But the cinematography reflects this. And I agree with you on the cramped angles. Lots of nice long shots of, like, there's not huge amounts of cutting back and forth. It's just this one thing, following the character walking up a staircase. And somehow, because it's dead silent and because of the way it feels, that's terrifying. The anticipation is killing you. It's almost like, just get it out of your system. Like, freak me out already so I can get on to the next level. It's not freaking me out, you know? I think the cinematography is fantastic. I really, really enjoy it. I really enjoy the set pieces, as you were saying. The houses are fantastic as well. I really like... I think the monster design's good.
The makeup is very effective for it, in my opinion.
It's minimal.
Yeah, it's very minimal, yeah.
It's good.
I think it gets a bit more later on in like the series, and I think it works still when it is more, but I do appreciate the kind of minimal effort for the designs for this one.
Do you know what the budget was for this film?
I have no idea. I don't imagine it was too much, though. Obviously, something else that plays into the scenes is how I think fantastic the music is with the movie. It's haunting, to put it lightly. The music builds up the tension. There's that bit with during the Katsuya chapter where he finds his wife or something and she's like on the bed, and then the music kind of gets all distorted and kind of fragmented. That stuck with me. I was like, fuck, that's creepy.
The noises are really gnarly.
Yeah, the noises as well. The sound design, obviously the sound design, like, the thing everyone's going to think of is like the cackling noise she makes as she's coming down.
Yeah,
that's very
breaking bones, kind of grinding against itself.
Yeah,
freaking you out. Yeah, absolutely.
And then the noise she makes is very iconic. I think the American remake uses a bit too much, but we'll get into that later. But I think everything from the sound aspect for that film is so fantastically structured to kind of just make you feel uneased at every aspect of the film. Whenever the music kicks in, it's almost a scare for us. It's like,
because they use silence so effectively.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
absolutely.
It is a very silent film. It is a very quiet film, and it doesn't really hold your hand in terms of like just showing you everything or answering everything. It scatters everything out and does expect you to kind of pick it up for yourself, and it takes its time with you as well. It does not brush through everything. It doesn't go through these scares quickly. It is a film that is about showing the characters walking from one scene to the next scene and kind of building up that tension as like they approach like their doom, basically. And it's effective because the whole time you're watching them and you're waiting for something to happen, and most of the time nothing's going to happen. But then like when the music kicks in and everything starts to happen, it fucking feels unnatural because you've just been used to quiet for the whole film. And I think a benefit of that as well is that because the characters are quiet, you don't really notice that the acting's kind of bad at places as well, in my opinion. Like I can notice that some of the acting isn't great.
I'm not paying attention to that at all. And honestly, I was trying, but I didn't see any point where this was really, really shocking, like terrified or anything else. I think it projects so hard onto the characters you barely notice. I
agree, yeah, and I think that's where it benefits. I just think that some of the actual line deliveries isn't too great. Some of them are a bit too cheesy for my liking. Funnily enough for me, I think Toshio is one of the best actors in that film, which is very bizarre for me that I'd say a kid is the best actor.
One word.
Yeah, one word, but everything else, like facial expressions and movements, it's just so perfectly like done. And Kayako as well is obviously fucking, like, that actress is fantastic in my opinion. She nails her role and she's fucking creepy, like, when she does her body movements, like, down the stairs. It is so effective. I think the actual ghost and the demons do a fantastic job. I just think the human actors are a bit,
Which human actors in particular do you think?
I think, like, most of them, honestly. Rika's lines, deliveries are a bit kind of tilted at points. Most of the men as well feel a bit exaggerated, which might be done on purpose, honestly. They might exaggerate them a bit, because I think there is a bit of a common theme with the men and female characters in the film. But, Izumi as well is a bit weird in terms of her acting as well. I just think the acting's a bit, like, it doesn't feel natural, is the thing. It does feel like it's kind of exaggerated, but like you said, you don't really notice it, because the film is so quiet, and you don't really get a lot of dialogue in the film. And when there is stuff happening, it is more like the actual visual stuff is happening. There is very minimal dialogue, and I think it plays that like they knew that. I think the bad acting isn't a bad thing because you barely notice it. There isn't much room to actually see how these actors excel as actors or anything because it's more about what is happening to them. And it's great, but it is noticeable for me. And that's where I think the dated aspect does come in, that it does kind of have the early 2000s Japanese, like, acting, in my opinion. Or the early, like, horror acting. Yeah.
I've got no experience in that field at all, so I have no idea how it operates.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just something I know. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but I feel like I kind of do understand a bit when, like, Japanese acting isn't too good now. Not just because I've watched a lot of anime or anything, obviously, but because I am kind of learning Japanese now. I think I do have a bit of an understanding when words, like, when the language isn't being too accurately said or anything. But yeah, it's not a big takeaway for me. It's just something that I noticed, and yeah, I don't think it hinders what the characters are too much either. Like I said, I think it actually I think Kayako and Toshio are the best actors, and their characters are fantastically done. But on the topic of characters, before we get onto the aspect of the ghost characters, I think we should talk about the human characters. And what do you have to say about the human characters, or the unsuspecting victims of the movie, basically?
Yeah, pretty much, man. I like Rika. I think she feels grounded enough that she's a good audience surrogate in a story, which is what you want. You want a good audience surrogate. You want someone who feels, acts, talks, operates like you. Now, I have the obvious disadvantage of being from Australia instead of Japan, so I don't quite understand everything there. But even with subtitles, this movie's terrifying. I think that says something. But Rika feels pretty well adjusted. Also, the sister of the
Katya, Hitomi,
yeah, she's fantastic. I think she's like just a regular person, just going through the motions, like doing her usual sort of day-to-day thing.
Yeah. I think her character is so great because you're sympathetic to her because she's probably the least involved. She just visited the house for literally a minute and then got kicked out, but then that was still enough for the Grudge to chase her and kill her. So you do feel.
Well. I really like Azumi's character. I think she's Rika's death is the most tragic because I think part of it because you've been with her for the longest time, and so when she gets killed at the end, it feels really bad. But I really like Azumi because she feels like a regular school kid who had nothing to do with any of the sort. And what was her dad? Like her dad went there once to try to solve the murder.
Yeah, her dad was
she visited it once, like just in passing for a laugh.
Yeah. And it's tragic in a lot of ways that like she ends up getting dragged back into it, and I think it does kind of tie into how the curse might kind of keep bringing them back as well. Like I said, it does kind of kill the family members of them as well, or it has this effect on them as well, kind of leaving them with nothing. And I think that ultimately that kind of might be what drags Izumi back into it. But I do find her character a bit kind of tragic in the sense that her dad died, and then she ends up dying to the same thing later on, and she doesn't even really want to go there either. She's kind of dragged there by friends, and then she ends up leaving. Then her friends die, and then she thinks her friends hate her, and it's very unfortunate for her. Her character is tortured a lot in that like short segment that you get with her. I think the female characters in it are pretty great, and I think the film does kind of have this idea of this theme of how the female characters are kind of, I don't want to say suppressed almost, or kind of mistreated, but they are like kind of under the men characters in a lot of ways. Like Rika, the first scene you see of her is this guy, her boss towering over her and making her go to this house that she doesn't want to do. And then while Katsuya and his wife aren't really like a bad relationship or anything, his wife does kind of get left at home. She's mistreated by her mother. It's implied or something like the mother doesn't like her. And the husband doesn't really take it too seriously or anything. And then ultimately as well, Katsuya seems to get possessed by Taiko and starts and like kills her as well by bringing her into the attic. And I think obviously that theme is there because Kayako was killed by Taiko. So it is kind of the underlying theme of like the idea that Kayako is kind of, she's mistreated as a woman. So the female characters you get are also similar to her in a lot of ways. They're women that are undergoing kind of unfortunate events. And that's why I think most of the characters in that film are women, because it is kind of the underlying theme. And that doesn't make Kayako sympathetic. In like an American movie, Kayako would be sympathetic if she was a ghost and saw a woman that was kind of being mistreated, or probably. But in this film, it's just like a kind of thing that connects all the characters and kind of makes the characters understand. Like Rika seems to become sympathetic of Kayako at the end, but it doesn't stop it from dying. It's just an aspect that connects them all, and it's something that ties a little coherent theme into it, which maybe I can write about in the future, but I might need a bit of more time to flesh out the idea, as you can tell. But I think the human characters do what they do. Like, they serve their role well, and the stories that are told with them are compelling, at least. Like, you do feel at the edge of your seat watching them. The Hitomi thing, for example, like, the bedsheet thing is probably one of the best scares ever, because I think that just completely gets rid of that one aspect of safety that every like person watching would be like, oh yeah, just hide under your blankets, and then nah, she's there as well. There is no, like, and that's adds to the claustrophobic thing as well, because she's under the blankets with you. That's fucking terrifying to me. The idea of that happening is fucking horrifying to me. That is probably the most effective scare in that movie for me.
I think a couple of the TV scenes are really interesting as well. Like the one where Kayako disappears in front of the TV when after she kills the security guard, just like freaks the heck out of the detective.
Yeah.
And he runs home and then loses his mind and then like tries to burn down the house and then gets eaten there, I think. And then also on top of that, I keep saying eaten, but killed. Same diff. But also we've got who's on the other end who cops in the TV when Hitomi's hiding under the blankets and then she looks around and that TV
yes,
gets
that is
that's the one that really
real creepy. And it's making the crackling noise through it as well.
Ooh, I'm not a fan of this at all. I think I have a question. Like, what is it about? Because Ring came after this movie, right?
No, it came before. I'm pretty sure. I think The Ring was first. I think it was.
Interesting. Is there a particular like blend or something in Japanese horror where there's screwy technology kind of has its own horror aspect?
I don't want to speak too much for Japanese culture, but I could probably see there is like a bit of a trend in like technology kind of being the instigation for like horror things in Japanese culture. I have noticed that. I'm not too sure where it ties into, if there is some kind of subconscious thing that the Japanese have with like technology, and I'm not sure what it would be exactly. But it is something I have noticed.
You got this. They both use those like VCR style, like the TV is going to kill you kind of shit. Like they use it for jumps, like they use it for scares, right? So I've obviously heard tell of the Ring, I haven't seen it. But that seems to be a really like strong part of at least these potentially early 2000s films, and I'm interested where that's what it comes from. And
I'm interested as well. I am also very interested in that. I just don't have any answers, and I don't want to sound like some kind of fucking stupid weeb that's like, oh, it's from this aspect of Japanese or something. The honest answer is I don't know. I could probably theorize if I thought about it enough, but I don't feel qualified enough to do that.
I feel like there's, and there are obviously a lot of American remakes of this particular style of horror.
Yes,
right?
This film definitely inspired a lot. Like, you can see it pretty well. Like, you said it before, that there's that whole trend of like bones cracking or kind of like the body is like making weird angles that don't look right.
Yeah.
And that, I think this film definitely instigated that for American at least the American remake did, because I just swear every fucking horror movie after that for the longest time had just ghosts cracking their bodies in weird places and they're just being scary. But the thing is, it's not scary when you've seen it 100 times. It's scary in the first time because this was one of the first times you saw it. And the way, it's also the fact that Kaika's actress also really does a great job with it as well. It's not scary when it's CGI or actually isn't impressive or anything. You've seen it a million times. And also when it's overdone in the movie, which I'm pretty sure the remake does kind of overdo it a bit. But in this, it's scary because you only get one instances of her being kind of all weird, like in terms of body angles. You get a couple, but they're minor, and then you get the final scene.
Falling down the staircase, and you're just transfixed in the same way Rika would be. Again, this movie does a fantastic job of throwing you in with the characters.
Mm-hmm.
You really sympathise with them. The camera angles, the way everything moves. You're just transfixed by this thing. You're just watching it like, when's it going to end? When's it going to end? When's it going to end? That was at least what was on my mind.
Yeah.
And by the time you get to the end of it, she's just sort of standing there in front of him. It's like, are they coming? She's not dead yet. Are they coming to an understanding? Is there going to be some kind of resolution here? Is this no?
It's just
no.
Yeah.
Nope.
What happens at the end is that Taika kills her, and I interpret it as, because the start of the movie says that the Ju-on is a spirit of rage, and that these spirits can kind of just invite more spirits to take their place because they kill people, and then that ends up bringing more people that are resentful. So ultimately, I see it as Taika was killed by Kaiko's spirit, and then he ends up coming back to haunt the house as well because he's resentful towards Kaiko. Because it's implied that he thought she was cheating on him, but it's not really directly stated. And then Taika, I assume, is just kind of repeating history, and like he kills Rika in the same way Kaiko was, and you see Toshio watching from the upstairs balcony, and that's kind of why Toshio is always watching things. Yeah, and the cycle continues. The endless loop of death.
And that's what scares me the most about it, I think. When you get down to brass tacks for this, it's so hopeless. And this is tying back into your love of Lovecraft, I think, in that there is no escape, there is no beating this, there is no winning this, there is nothing.
Yes.
You don't have a way out at all. There's just, you're gonna get eaten. It's just a case of when and where, really. And I like Well, I like Predator for a number of reasons. Mostly because of Arnold Schwarzenegger's biceps, but also because of that, there's just that whole concept of you can kill this with fire, you can kill this with guns, you can kill it. There's a combative American, freedom-loving, I can win this particular fight if I'm smart enough about it kind of system going on.
Whereas I like the films where there's pretty much no escape and it's all hopeless.
Right. I'm showing my, sort of love of action movies, and you're probably showing your love of existential despair. But I like the idea of triumph. I like the idea that there is a way to win, there is a way to do something, there is a way to end this, there is a way to make it stop. And I keep saying this as in, like, please, Shaun, please do not put me through this again. Make it stop now. But, there is resolution. I suppose that's one of the things that horror does that you don't find in the typical story structure, is that there's no neat tying up of ends.
Yeah.
We need to continue to headfuck the audience for the next 3 months. So we're just going to leave the entire end open, and the heroes didn't win. It was all hopeless anyway. And I hope you sleep well tonight.
I think,
Enjoy.
I think the film does do a good job. Because a lot of people say that it kind of doesn't tie up ends as well. I think the movie does kind of give you all the answers you need, so you understand. I think you do kind of understand what's going on by the end of the film. It's just that the answer, you don't get the satisfying resolution of everything ends up happily. It's just that you know what happened, but it's not really a happy answer. But also
there's still so many questions. I think that, again, and we've talked about this before, I think that the most terrifying monster you have is the one that you don't see much of. The one that you can't explain, the one that you can't quantify.
Yeah.
That's why Cthulhu and Cthulhu mythos is so good. But also, The Quiet Place. Right? So, using that as an example, you've got a monster, you've got a thing that's attracted to sound, you can't make noises because they'll come and eat your face. So, you don't make sound. But then they find out a way to stun them and kill them at the end. Yeah. So I found that a really satisfying ending of that, because I was like, oh, hang on a second. No, they can be beaten, it's just a system you need to put into play.
Yeah.
And so I really like that kind of resolution, because it's like, okay, so we've got a weapon. Now they're bringing out a sequel, and there's going to be questions about that, but that's Cillian Murphy in it, so it might be okay.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
I enjoy. I do think
but
that
this movie. Sorry, just to finish. Cap off that point. This movie does not have that kind of you can win this.
Yeah.
This shit will spread. It will keep spreading. If you it will come into contact with family members of people who went to the house. Like Izumi, for instance, her friends get copped by this.
Yeah, I don't think her two friends after get killed, or you don't see them die on screen at least.
I think that's the sequels.
Or maybe, who knows? Yeah.
I did a little reading my own. But yeah, that's what I understand.
Alright, well, yeah. I personally find the ending satisfying, and I think it does tie everything up.
I do find it, like, it's that one last really horrifying scare. I think I'm just completely transfixed. It's like that thing where you just look at something so horrifying and disgusting or weird or odd that you just stare at it and you can't take your eyes off it at all.
Yeah.
And Kyoko crawling down the stairs like a spider is just terrifying.
It sticks with you.
Yeah, absolutely, it does, and you're transfixed by it. And then the same way, every time I'm in a horror movie like this, I'm just looking at the people going, "Run, get out of there, burn the house down, run for it, just get the heck out." And then I realize, like, it's almost funny because I'm sitting there as the audience watching this creature crawl down the stairs, and then flip side, characters in the movie aren't moving, and then I'm thinking about it, going, "Would I be moving away? Would I be running for it? Would I be trying to jump up and knife this thing in the head?" I don't think so.
I think it does imply in future films that she does petrify people when she stares at them, so they can't actually move. And you kind of get that glimpse as well, that the characters are trying to move, but they just can't look away. I think there is more I want to say in the remake, like, a bit, but I before that, I do want to kind of segue into Kayako, but, like, not subtly at all, but as I said before, I think Kayako is the protagonist of this film, if there is one, because I think the film is kind of working at the angle that she is a sympathetic villain in a lot of ways. Like, not sympathetic in the way that you like her character or anything. It's just sympathetic in a way that you understand why she is this giant, this hateful curse that is relentless, and you can at least feel bad for her for what happened and understand what she wants or why she wants what she wants. And in a way, the film is about her just kind of exacting meaningless revenge on these people that haven't wronged her. And that makes her a bit kind of sad to watch. And I think the film works best when you consider it from the angle that Kayako is the protagonist and not Rika or any of these other characters, where it is a film about how she was killed by her husband. And it's never implied if she did actually cheat on him or anything, obviously. And I think some films do kind of imply it. I like the vagueness of if it happened or not. So, like, the idea of, oh, maybe he just killed her because he went insane. And, like, she didn't actually cheat on him and there was no reason for her to die. I think that tragedy is what stems into the rest of the movie, where it's just her kind of repeating cycles of just hatred and killing, and without much meaning. She doesn't consider anything. She doesn't grow sympathetic of the characters that are similar to her in some ways. She just kills them because she's hate, or the only thing that's left of her is her hatred. She's not the same person she was. She's just her hatred, and that makes it very sympathetic to her. You don't want her to kill all these people. Obviously, you don't want her to continue as she is. You just feel sympathetic towards her, and I think that is the ultimate takeaway from this film, is that you are meant to kind of be sympathetic, but you're not meant to enjoy what you're seeing as well. If that makes sense.
It does. I don't know what kind of twisted fucks enjoy horror movies for pleasure, but,
Well.
I'm just saying, I find it really tough to enjoy this stuff, man. Because I want some resolution, I want some kind of victory, I want something going on. And but taking your angle of argument, you can say Kayako is, like, having a victory. She is having a win. She's getting what she wants, but does she really want this?
Well, no, yeah, exactly. That's the tragedy that she doesn't really want to.
What I've seen, and also, just on that, I think there's a lot of there is a lot of very subtle implication going on. For me, for instance, I watch this movie. I don't see Kayako's struggle or story or problems.
Oh, she doesn't have a story in the conventional sense, but this film is not conventional at all.
No, it's not conventional. But I'm just saying, I don't understand why she's killing all these people.
Oh yeah,
I'm more transfixed by the fact that she is.
Yeah. Well,
no. I mean, again, I'm new to this, so you have to help me out here. But I get the implication. Like, this is not my kid, because you hear it from the male character who gets possessed by it or whatever. Like, he gets affected by the house and he starts going nuts. But there's that. So that's like pretty not explicit, but it's implied pretty heavily, so it's easy to pick up on. But I don't understand why. I just don't get the... Again, I keep asking the why. Why is this going on? Why is it happening the way it is? And I think one of the reasons this movie is so terrifying is because you never get an answer to that.
I mean, well, I think you do get an answer.
Well, revenge, sure, but like
it's just
revenge at what cost? There is no end to it. There's nothing human about this, and that's that's probably why it's so good. You can't... It's why it's so terrifying. And good means terrifying in this perspective, I guess. It's a good horror movie because... There is no end to this. This doesn't end. There's no expiration date. There's no, I'm satisfied now.
Yeah. Well,
it's like, bitch, I will kill your whole family on steroids. I will kill your whole family and everyone family's ever talked to. And I'll do it after a period of 5 years. This is why I think Azumi's so tragic. She, got to grow up.
Mm.
She got to grow up and become a regular teenager doing regular things and put that behind her. Her mum's a bit of a screwball, okay, but, she still got haunted and ripped up by this stuff. It just took, 6, 7 something years for that to happen. Yeah. And then she still died. There's no reason for this to be the case at all. There's nothing human that can quantify it. Again, we come back to Cthulhu, but I agree with that. There's no human element in this. This is extrapolated, and
I think
because of that, it's
terrifying.
What's sorry?
I think there is a human element, though. That element is that it is just a hateful-filled thing because, the movie says at the start, she's just a hateful spirit that. She got screwed out of her life. She lost her child. She lost her husband. Her husband killed her child and her, and she didn't get to live the life that she wants. And because of that, she was obviously understandably hateful when she died. Yeah. And that hatred is just left on Earth while she goes and does whatever happens to her, the rest of her spirit. And ultimately, that is the reason that it is just about this tragic event and how, it's kind of Japanese folklore as well of the traditions of ghosts and that, and how this ghost is just. Repeating cycle is meaningless, and that's the tragedy of her character, is that there's no reason to what she's doing. She's just, kind of continuing this loop of hatred and killing people that come across her, and there's no reason for it. It's just, that's the tragedy, in my opinion. And that's that's the center of the whole movie, is that it is just a movie about kind of resentment and unfulfilled kind of life, and how she's just taking the life from these others that for no reason.
It's heavy shit, dude.
Yeah.
It's heavy shit.
And I think that's one of the reasons why I really don't like what the remake does, because... So we'll talk about the remake a bit briefly, because I think I do kind of want to tie into this idea of why I don't think a remake of this film works. I think, so I will give credit where credit's due. The remake is set in Japan. It isn't set in America or anything, and if it was set in America, it would not work. It would be fucking stupid, and it wouldn't make sense. But they do set it in Japan. They seem to have Japanese actors to some extent in the film, though it seems like those actors are minor characters that get killed off in the scenes they're introduced, which is a bit funny to me. But it's all just this American family that moves to Japan for some reason. I don't know if they ever state why, and they move into the house and they get killed. The house looks a bit more open, in my opinion, in the American remake, which I'm not a big fan of. But
bigger budget though.
Bigger budgets, yeah, sure, but I don't think that ultimately means it's going to be a better movie.
It's directed by the same guy who did Spider-Man, right?
It's directed by the same guy who did Spider-Man and The Evil Dead, so he does know how to make horror movies.
He did The Evil Dead as well?
He did The Evil Dead, yeah.
Okay, I did not follow Sam Raimi at
Yeah,
all.
but he's a fantastic director. I just think I think he's very hit or miss, like, for me. There are a lot of movies where I kind of look at it and I'm like, what the fuck were you thinking, dude? But this movie is one of them where I think he really tried to, and he does all the right things for me. Like, he does what I think he should be keeping in mind. He keeps it in a Japanese setting. He also gets the original actors for Kayako, Toshio, and Taiko to come back as well, which I think is fucking great. I think it's really good that he did that, and that shows, and I think what happens because of that is that they're the best parts of the movie. But even then, there's limitations. The movie is, from what I've seen, is filled with cuts all over the place. It doesn't have that lingering feeling of, like, you being stuck in the room and it's slowly panning down. That scene where she's getting terrorized by the staircase, Kayako just, like, it looks like it's fast-forwarded in a sense. I heard that apparently she crawled up the stairs, like, backwards, and then they reversed, like, the footage or something to make it look unnatural. And that's cool, but it's so fast when you see it. It's not slow. It doesn't feel like she's coming down slowly and then she's petrified. It feels like she's literally chasing after her. And on top of that, that crackling noise is played throughout the whole fucking ending scene. There's like a 5-minute ending scene where it's just played constantly. And it's so, like, it gets old after it. Because you're like, I've heard this already. I don't want to keep hearing this. Just fucking use it limited. In the staircase scene in the original, she only uses it when she's not on screen. And then when she actually appears on the stairs, she's just crawling down. And it's just the music kind of making you unsettled. But there's no crackling sound or anything. She's just walking down. And there's the thumping of her, like, hitting the stairs as she does. In the remake as well, she's, like, drenched in blood, and it's a bit too much for my liking, and it's kind of like, yeah, like, she was covered in blood in the original, but she wasn't fucking drenched in it or anything. It just looks too excessive, and I think that's the problem with American audiences, is that, not to insult American horror, there's fantastic American horror films, and I'm not denying that at all, but American audiences don't have the patience for what The Grudge was, in my opinion. The Grudge is a very slow movie. The best parts of the movie are the bits that are building up to it, in my opinion, where you are sitting there in suspense waiting. You can't translate that well to American audiences because they want to be more engaged. They want to be scared more. They want things that actually jump at them. They want meaning, for example. In this film, it looks like it kind of paints Kayako as a bit more hateful as a character. Apparently, later on in the films as well, they imply that Kayako manipulated Taiko into, like, thinking that she was cheating on him or something, and she, like, just kind of abused him and treated him like shit. And I just read that, I was like, that's so dumb. That shouldn't be stated or anything. That isn't necessary. And if the originals do it as well, I don't think it's necessary there either. I think what works for the original is that you don't know much about this family. All the characters are tragic in their own sense, because they all just unfortunate characters that don't understand each other. But in the original, Kayako seems antagonistic, and she does try to kill the main character. And she's full, and, like, Taiko kills some random other character, and Kaiko's the final villain, and it doesn't work as well, in my opinion. It doesn't work because Kaiko doesn't feel like the main character. It feels like this random blonde American actress is the main character. And she survives the movie and then dies in the sequel, which is cool, but I think she should have just died at the end of the movie like the original, because it leaves you with this feeling of hopelessness rather than watching it and then thinking, like, oh yeah, they escaped or something. It seems to forget the feel of what the original does. And like I said, I think it's just a product of, you can't do this film in American culture. I think The Ring is a film that you can kind of translate to American culture because it's not too heavily oriented in Japanese culture. Like, the idea of the monster is limited to the tape. You can kind of put that setting in other countries. And I think the American Ring remake does a better job of adapting a Japanese movie. I don't think it's good. I think the original is far superior. But I think with this film, it's just this... It's like Your Name, in a sense, where
I was going to actually bring that
it is so inherently Japanese, it is really hard to translate it to American audiences without losing a lot of what makes the original really important. People were like, oh, the remake's scarier. And it's like, that's cool if you want to be scared, but the original isn't just a scary movie. There is something more to it, for me at least, and I enjoy what is there more than the actual scare elements for it. And so when I see the remake and how it just kind of over-exaggerates all these scares, I'm kind of just like, it's not as cool. It just feels edgy in a way, and I don't know. It just bugs me a lot. I think Sam Raimi is a great director, though. Evil Dead is one of my favorite American horror movies. So I don't think he's shit at making horror movies. I just think that with this movie, his style doesn't translate well for what the film is. But I went on a tangent there. You can add your input now if you want.
What I think is that this is no. I have genuine questions. I think there is. I said this before, I think it still applies here. There is a distinct feeling of disconnection from the culture, right? So this is one of the things like I was thinking about today when we were like talking about the podcast and everything else between frenetic bouts of autistic Skyrim. But I feel like horrified by the movie, obviously, but there's also such an interesting disconnect between the cultures that it's. What makes it even scarier is that I have no way of quantifying it, right? So you just earlier said that American films have this thing where there's a nice resolution at the end, or the people win or they don't win, or it's, whatever, like this blonde chick survives the movie. That's the kind of resolution I would have liked to have in this film, yeah? Like, just straight up, it's my instinctive, I want there to be a resolution to this. And what makes it terrifying is that there isn't. And then, so when I'm looking at, like, I don't know horror films, but I like a sort of meaningful conclusion. Someone gets out alive, it's okay. The last girl survives Jason Voorhees and gets out of there and then lives the rest of her life traumatized and, with PTSD. But she's alive, and that's it.
I mean, she's killed in the start. They're always killed at the start of the next movie.
Well, I don't do horror, bro. I don't know this. But
just throwing in that
hopelessness. Well, what I find even more terrifying about this film, like, I have not seen any Western horror films for the most part, so I have no frame of reference. But when I watch this one, I guess when I watch horror, when I think of horror, I have this sort of setup in my head that at least someone gets away. The last girl survives. The last girl wins. The virgin survives the entire, whatever. She gets out of there.
Yeah.
Whatever the case might be. Like, she's nice to the monster lets her go. Or something. There's this kind of redeeming human element about the forces that you're fighting, and that will let you run, or that you just get an opening, or that you exploit some kind of weakness and you get out of it. This has none of that. And I've said this earlier again with the Cthulhu mythos, but it's the same with this. There is no... Like, I'm very interested to know if that's just a Western thing where, like, the hunted, the traumatized, the people being attacked can actually survive. Is that a common trope in Western horror films?
It's not just Western. Like, a lot of Japanese things... There are some, like, Japanese, like, manga as well, especially where horror-oriented, where I feel like the characters do get out alive. It is a very ordinary trope. I personally think that a satisfying and meaningful ending doesn't necessarily mean all the characters escape. I think a satisfying...
Not even all. I think you need... from a writer's perspective, you need to kill off... You need to kill off some
characters. I also think that, like, you can make a meaningful ending with all the characters dying. It is possible.
Yeah, it is possible. But again, it's not my field of expertise, man. I don't...
No, yeah, I understand that.
I'm not George R. R. Martin in this bitch, right?
Well, yeah.
I'm not just killing people off randomly, willy-nilly for shock value, like taking the most famous character and then putting... Or the most well-loved character and putting them through a...
Well, I have my criticism of that, but...
I do too, yeah. But really that alone, when I talk about The Walking Dead or Game of Thrones here, I think that... When I'm adding myself, it's like... I'm not a fucking normie, okay? I don't watch Game of Thrones. But, like, I don't... Yeah, I find that I don't find this fits in any kind of structure in my own head. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. And that's what makes it, like, all the more terrifying. I'm scared by it. Don't get me wrong. I'm absolutely fucking horrified by this movie. It just fucks with you. But I don't have any kind of reference point to understand it.
Yes.
And as a consequence, that ups the fear factor, but also ups the confusion. So you've very helpfully laid out a very good plot structure, which I appreciate. But I'm just, like, I'm fascinated, but I'm repulsed and fascinated. It's a weird one. I don't know. Is this the genesis of a horror fan? Is this how it happens? Is this how it starts? You just watch it and go, "This is fucked up," and I'm like pissing my pants right now, and I just genuinely have no frame of reference, and I want to experience more so I can get a frame of reference.
Yeah, it's kind of the normal
horror
starts? Opinion.
Yeah.
No,
are you twisting me into your own minion?
No, basically.
Are we going to start doing a horror podcast?
Yep. Every week.
Well, fuck.
Every day.
And I'm editing it too, aren't I?
Yeah, you'd be editing it. But yeah,
that's my only 2 cents, man. Like,
and that's fair. Yeah. I think it's just like the ultimate difference. Obviously, people that like have read my blog know that I personally think horror movies can have more to them than a scare factor. I think a good horror movie is one that is on like one side scary and like does make you terrified of what it's showing you. But on the other end, it does have a coherent story, and it does have a message, and like the ending does fit in with that message. And I think the ending for Grudge does fit in with the theme of what the film is about, which is that it's a film that is kind of about meaningless hatred that is placed in places where it doesn't need to be placed. And ultimately, the ending of that does kind of emphasize that tragedy and why I think it's so great. But I can understand why you are repulsed by the ending and want like a more satisfying ending. I just personally think that I personally think that it doesn't need a satisfying ending. I think that emphasizing the horror of the movie is a satisfying ending in its own sense. Basically, yeah, I think this film does do that. I think by the end of this film, you do feel the horror and, in a sense, the tragedy of what is these characters.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It is definitely a good tragedy. But tragedy should will leave you with some kind of catharsis.
Should it though?
Yep. Ancient Greek stuff, man. There's always a feeling of like everyone always gets together to discuss, Hamlet or whatever else. Like, your classic Western tragedy always has these elements. And from what I've heard from a guy, like, horror is a good moral tale in all cases. And it may very well be in this fact that meaningless, unaimed hatred at anything that comes into your general vicinity is a bad call. And our 14-year-old edgelords within just sort of shake their heads and laugh. But really, that is a good point. I think that's a really good point to make. Yeah, hatred will consume you. It will, completely and utterly overtake you, and there will be a point wherein you just can't get away from it.
Yeah.
And it will destroy you and destroy everyone you love around you because you won't be able to feel any kind of love. Like, every single loving relationship in this movie is broken down and taken to pieces. Every single one. Schoolgirl friends, husband and wife, mother and son, father and son, obviously, with the very genesis of it. Friend of friend, or, our sister and brother, all those things just go to pieces.
Mm-hmm. And it's all ties in because Kayako's life fell to pieces as well. She didn't get to live her life. And that is ultimately the, thing to take away from the film. It is a film, for me, where I do understand why it happens, but ultimately there is no meaning to these deaths or anything, ultimately. The meaning to the death is that it is meaningless. There is no reason for these characters to die. They didn't do anything to Kayako. She's just a hateful spirit that can't, let go of what she lost, and so she's taking it out on these innocent souls that really don't deserve it, and it's the tragedy of the film.
And she's going to take it out on mine, thanks to you.
Yeah, well, I'm glad I did my job.
Yep.
Don't worry, I won't recommend a horror podcast episode for at least another 10 episodes or so.
Oh, right, yeah, nice. I'll hold you to that, man. I'll hold you to that.
Alright, well, in 10 episodes, we'll probably be talking about another horror film, guys. Keep that in mind.
Do Quiet Place. That I can deal with.
No, I'm not going to go easy on you. I'll recommend The Ring next. Maybe we'll watch the Grudge remake.
Maybe we won't, though.
Maybe we should.
Maybe I'll pull rank.
Maybe we should watch the remake and then come back and talk on it, because that way we'll have more to say on it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. But yeah, I think that about wraps up
The Grudge. I would strongly recommend that no one ever watch this film, so you can sleep better at night. But what do you reckon, Shaun?
I would strongly recommend a lot of people check out this film, because I imagine that a lot of people probably only watch the American remake. And I think the original has its merits, and I think it is better than the remake in a lot of ways. But I don't think it's for everyone, obviously. And even for horror fans, I don't think it's for everyone. I think it is a slow film, and you should be aware of that when you go into it, that it is not a film that follows any conventional storytelling or anything. It does what it wants, and I think it does it effectively, but maybe not everyone agrees with that.
And you respect those kind of balls?
I respect it, yes.
Big brass balls.
I respect the movie as a story and how it tells a story, and I think it's creepy, but I don't find it terrifying or anything.
As I said earlier with BoJack, if it makes you feel shit, it's good.
Yeah, exactly.
So it is well executed and makes you feel shit. Even if that shit is pants-shitting fear, it's good. For that reason. So, again, if you're into horror, if you enjoy horror, if you want to see Shaun traumatize me some more, do us two favours. One, follow his blog, 28 posts later, my bad. 28 posts later. And also, leave a comment behind. Just say, we want to see Pete traumatized more often.
Leave your recommendation for horror movies to make Pete watch.
Oh,
if I see one that's good, I'll absolutely
You've probably seen all of them anyway this week.
I haven't seen all of them, to be fair. But I feel like I probably would know a lot that people would comment. But anyway.
I need to start throwing dumb action movies at you just to
just to counterbalance this.
Oh, dude, I was thinking about something super sappy and really. It's like the Your Name after the BoJack Horseman kind of system.
Yeah.
I was thinking I need something really to just.
So this is the recommended part.
What? Sorry,
you're doing your recommendation.
I was going to do my recommendation.
Okay,
is there anything else we need to discuss?
No, that's fine. But no one leaves comments.
Alright, cool. Do pigeons have ears?
What?
Pigeons? Do they have ears?
I don't think so.
Cool. Do birds have ears generally?
I don't know.
Excellent. We've got that sorted. The next week's recommendation is going to be a comic book that I hold very dear to my heart that I haven't been able to shut up about to Shaun at all, and it is Transmetropolitan by Warren Ellis.
Okay, yeah.
That's what I'm hitting you with, my man.
Cool. How
Please
long
tune
is
in
it?
next week. Long. Yeah,
Long, alright.
It's a bigger boy.
Alright, I'll start reading as soon as possible.
It will be workable. I think you'll be able to find it. I can provide you with some sources if required. Thank you all very much for tuning in. If you like your horror stuff, you should definitely follow Shaun on 28 Posts Later. It's a blog spot. He's also on Twitter. Get onto this shit. I occasionally write stuff, but my work ethic is nowhere near as hard as Shaun's. The Weekly Whiff. So check that out on Twitter and on Blogspot as well. Thank you all very much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.